The topic for today's podcast is Amplifying Your Impact with Everyday AI with Tyler Moberg. Unpacking Education is brought to you by AVID.org. AVID believes in seeing the potential of every student. To learn more about AVID, visit their website at avid.org. Our quote for today is from our guest, Tyler Moberg. On his website, Amplified Impact, he writes, AI isn't just about working faster. It's about producing better outcomes, unlocking creativity, and achieving meaningful results, all while keeping humans at the center. All right, Winston, what are you thinking about that quote today?
So for me, sometimes when I hear AI, I have to actually push myself from being a young child who grew up watching a lot of sci-fi movies where, the Matrix, where AI was bad, right? Like, I recognize that I have to push myself. But for this one, I really love the idea that it's not about, like, doing the menial things. It's about the opportunities to think about, like, what do I really want to say? How do I really want to say this now that I've gathered all the information? What's the best way for me to use my voice, knowing that I can not have to spend 2-3 hours doing the grind of getting the information. Now I can spend 2-3 hours thinking about what I want to do and how I like to show my creativity. So I like that aspect of it about unlocking the creativity because, again, it's giving you time. So I'm really feeling that idea.
Yeah, I kind of settled in on that unlock word too, because I think right now there's a lot of people that are nervous about AI. They think AI is going to either take their job or it's going to pull the creativity out of our students or it's going to make them lazy because they're just going to cheat on every assignment. But I like the positive forward thinking of unlocking, because that means that AI is like a missing key that we can use to get to some place where we haven't been before. And we don't know where that is exactly, but I think that's the positive, exciting way that we can look at it. So I'm kind of stuck on the same word, unlock.
See? Teamwork.
All right. Well, we are really excited today to have Tyler Moberg with us. Tyler is an AI learning and training specialist and the founder of Amplified Impact. His background includes experience as a middle school science teacher and as an instructional coach and leader. We want to welcome you to the show, Tyler. Welcome.
Hey.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Winston. Super pumped to be here. Honored to be invited.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah, we're happy to have you here. And, I shared just a real brief introduction of you. If you want to take just a minute and tell us a little bit more about yourself, your background, let our audience get to know who you are a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So like you said, my background, I was a middle school science teacher for a huge chunk of my career and never thought I would be doing anything different. I loved it. Um, Got an invitation to be an instructional coach, an instructional leader at a school called Southview Middle School. And it's a school that I'm very proud to be a part of. Just the things we had going on between flex time and advisory, multi-age advisory, given voice and choice, building agency and belonging for kids, just so many amazing things happening at that school where that really helped me grow a ton as an educator and then kind of see myself even as, hey, I could lead some of this work. And I didn't see that in myself until I had that opportunity. So, by the way, fun fact, we actually did start a podcast. I was part of starting a podcast at that school. And we had, the tagline was highlight the learnings and efforts of our staff, where we would interview other teammates and just kind of rise to the surface
Cool.
and share, increase sharing, and it was so fun. So yeah, in that work, then from there I had an opportunity to join the Bob Pike Group, and it's a relatively small company, but a nationally recognized one where I had the opportunity to travel around the country and for the last couple years and consult organizations on what does good training look like. And really, for me, that passion of like designing meaningful learning experiences where people walk away learning, retaining, and remembering what you hope. Getting to work in corporate America with companies, I've learned that a lot of what is out there is like a lot of reading of PowerPoints and sit and get, and then being able to bring, I guess you could come. It almost reminded me of like Zaretta Hammond for in adult training, right? Of like neuroscience based, research based. Whoever's working hardest is learning the most, and really, yeah, that was a really amazing opportunity where I discovered AI in that work, started using it, started using it in that work and as a part of in that corporate training world, and just fell in love with it, and developed a passion, and so much so that like I was spending all my time, free time, learning it and taking courses and using the tools, and ended up saying, you know what, I love this so much that I think I'm going to start my own company called Amplified Impact, where I help people amplify their impact using everyday AI. And so that's kind of what I've been doing. And it's I can talk more about that, but that has been it's I launched October 1st last year, and it's been a really fun journey, unexpected where it's gone, but just super fulfilling work right now.
Well, congratulations about 1 year anniversary then.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
congratulations.
coming up.
I'm so
Hmm?
glad that you're actually our guest. Speaking of your history in the classroom, your transition into corporate America, understanding the still need for the pedagogy of teaching, right? In terms of applying
Hmm.
that, and then
Hmm.
in terms of engaging that in AI. So I'm really appreciative of your past and present as a way of helping our listeners and teachers potentially support their AI engagement. So, with that said, as teachers start engaging and digging into this generative artificial intelligence (AI), right? What are some practical
Yeah.
ways that they can integrate this tool into their everyday workflow, right? Because that's really the thing. Teachers
Hmm.
don't want another new
Right.
thing they gotta think about. So, what could they
Yep.
actually? How could they use this tool in their everyday workflow?
Yeah. No, I love that question. And that's like that's literally what I zone in on. And I didn't say like right now, I mentioned I was doing a lot with corporate, but I'm working a ton with school districts and schools and leaders, and that question of like, what can I use it for? And I think that's the big question, right? It's like I hear it can do all these really cool things, but like what does that actually look like in my day-to-day work? And I think for me, for number one is don't think of it like one more thing, right? And you kind of alluded to this, but like when I was a teacher, I remember like the more I learned about what good teaching looked like, the more I realized that I what I needed to do, right, to actually have a well-designed lesson and an assessment and giving feedback and being coming up with an instructional response and giving kids choice and differentiating. And gosh, I was like, the more that I learned, ignorance wasn't bliss, because I knew kind of like, okay, this is what a good lesson is. And so, and then you see AI for a lot of teachers, and they're probably like, oh, great. We got one more thing to add to my pie of all the, where's that going to come from? How are we going to do that? So, that quote or thing we talked about is it's not just to help you become more efficient in all those things, but to see it as a tool that can help you do those things better, to a higher level. Hope if you're using it right, right? Yeah, you can cut shortcuts and you can just do, sure, you can make more worksheets, but like that's not the point, right? It's to invite it to, like when I work with teachers, I'll say like, what's on your to-do list today? And whatever that is, like that's the thing you should invite AI to the table on. And it's not just lesson plans. It's going to be all the other things that are on teachers' plates, right? And so I think that is huge. Don't think of it as another thing. Invite it to your day, your work you're already doing. That's how you're going to learn the limits, and that's how you're going to learn what it's currently good at. And also, my experience has been I've been pleasantly surprised by a lot of like outputs. I'm like, oh, well, that's something to work with. I can work with. It helps me hit the ground at like 30 miles an hour versus from scratch. It's not done. There's still a lot of me guiding and steering, but yeah. Hmm. 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 Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, thinking of it like, if you think about the PLC process, like the four PLC questions, right? What do we want our learners to know and be able to do? How will we know if they learned it? What if they do and what if they don't? If we invite AI to those four questions alone, right? Helping unpack standards, helping write learning objectives, scope and sequence, that's question one. Let's come up with some high quality assessments, and going through, determining instructional responses. Like if we invite AI to those four PLC questions alone, and we think of it like another PLC teammate, really, um, I think that has a ton of power, right? Hmm. No. Yeah. Who makes mistakes? Who can do more than you think, but yet, as long as we have that mindset, like we're the thought leaders in that work, AI can be our partner along the way to help us do some of that stuff.
And we
So,
still got to check their work sometimes. I
absolutely.
hope people check my work sometimes. So, we're going to check theirs too. So, kind of along that same line, when people are getting started, kind of follow up to Winston's question. Sometimes there's misconceptions because we don't really know what we don't know yet. What are some of the major misconceptions about AI that, or maybe even mistakes that people have made that you're seeing as you're kind of going out and around working with people?
Yeah. I'll tell you one that's like one of my passion areas because it's just really changed the way that I interact with AI, and that is not leveraging or using the voice prompt button. There's a little dictate button on most of the tools. Not all of them, but most of them have that right now. Are you guys using that button when you prompt?
Sometimes I feel weird talking to myself sometimes when I do that, but no, it's really
Yeah.
handy because it's like having a conversation.
It's like Siri.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like that idea of being able to spit out a messy idea,
Mm.
an unformed thought, and just talk to AI like you talk to a person can really up that prompting game to get results that are more aligned with your goals because most people's prompts are very short. They're like a Google search, right? 7 to 9 words is what they say. And what if we just kind of said, and we press that button and we just go, here's the context, here's what's going on, here's what I'm trying to do, here are my goals. Now, because AI is a pattern predictor, those outputs are going to be way more closely aligned to my actual goals, and it won't have to adapt it as much, and it'll help me just get higher quality output.
Have you seen people have success with that?
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, that's one of the big things in a lot of the different workshops that I lead, of just having people kind of get into doing that. And it is a little awkward when you're around people, and it also is a little awkward when your wife says, Tyler, you're talking to me like you're talk to Chat GPT. Like, don't you just like that tone of like, like you kind of have a cadence to it, right? But um, I think we don't give enough context, and I think that it doesn't need to be clean, and there's not a magic formula to it. It's just a matter of kind of getting that into the prompt. So that would be one. I have definitely some others, but any other thoughts on that from your end? I'm curious.
No, I think it's underutilized too, and I think maybe it's the feeling self-conscious about doing that around other people. I do think that plays into it. If you're all by yourself, maybe you're more apt to give it a shot.
Yep.
You know?
Yep.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
Sometimes I think it's like the art of writing also is valuable when you have to like think about what you
Yeah.
want to really try to get to really get condense that thought. But I could hear the brainstorming
Yep.
part of the value of that, absolutely. But for me, sometimes it is being able to craft something that I valuably want to get back because then that allows like for me to then interrogate because my question is then it becomes did I did it clearly understand what I was looking for in this jumble of thought, right?
Yeah.
So unless
Yep.
you know what I mean,
Yep.
unless there is that two-way, then am I understanding this? Am I getting this right? Then that becomes a better brainstorm. So I think that in that way
Yeah.
I can see, but I recognize the value of trying to to create a concise idea, right? In just the way that we're trying
Yep.
to ask our
Yep.
students to create those ideas to then
Yep.
ask AI to help
Yep.
support that, right?
That resonates.
I've seen somebody take it even one more level up. I've seen people turn the camera on and
Mm.
show
Mhm.
AI so it's that conversation again, right? So here's what I'm working on. I'm trying to do this. What are your thoughts about that? How should I approach this? And then they,
Yep.
having that visual on there as well, that's like a whole nother
That's
level
a good
to the
point.
playing field.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, that is. I don't see a lot of people using that. I played with it when it first came out, and then you kind of forget about it, right?
Hmm.
Uh, yeah, but that process of like writing, either typing your prompt or saying it, that is part of the learning
Mhm.
process. Like, is we're using it as teachers, and if kids are using it, they're having to put thoughts to words. That is, they're carrying the cognitive load. They're trying to shape and form it. Like that, for me, has led to deeper learning and understanding. So I think,
Without a doubt, I love the
yeah,
iterative process. Absolutely, right? The actual like
yep, yep,
doing it instead of just being like a cliff notes or going back to where you just get a shorthand version of things. But you
yep.
said something in your answer that I'm still kind of like, ooh, I want to pull that out a little bit more in the next
Do it.
question. You said AI is a predictor, right? How it predicts your ideas. Like you use it enough, it starts to recognize your pattern because as it is, it's just using algorithms to understand ideas. If I'm even getting that quote
Understanding
right,
quotes,
like
right?
you know what
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean. So
yeah,
here's my question to
yeah.
you. So how do we maintain like human in that loop, right, where it then instead of it just predicting our thought bubble, right, how
Yep.
do we work
Hmm.
how do we continue to make sure it doesn't totally automate, right? We know you need to do this, but also make sure that it's not done for us, but to make sure it's done with us, right? Not to us.
Hmm.
So how do we make sure that
Yep.
we keep and maintain that human interaction as we move forward?
Yeah. So I think it's way too easy with AI to generate a ton of white noise, a ton of text, a ton of whatever it is, code, images, sound, video. You can make so much stuff that's just not good or not helpful. And that's where I think creativity comes into play, is like realizing with AI, you can ideate, brainstorm, and it's infinitely patient, and you can come up with so many different, like, I call it like menus of ideas, where as the human in the loop, I have tastes, I have judgment, and I know what good looks like, and I know what I'm trying to use it for. And by the way, I love this quote. It's like there's some quote to the extent of, the better you are at your craft, AI will make you just a little bit more, because if you're really good at your craft, you can shape it because you have a high standard of what good looks like. But um, with this concept of, okay, I use AI, I make a bunch of stuff. Now I pull out the things that I think are good, and I picture it kind of like a giant funnel, like almost like we're a human funnel, where our job is to input, filter, refine, and really extract and work with some of those gems, some of those best elements, and then do something with it. So that's where I really see the human in the loop with this.
Well, thank you. That's a good answer.
I love that idea of the human as kind of sitting at the funnel. They're like the gatekeeper a little bit, right? The it's like
Hmm.
when I was in Scotland, the sheep come running in a herd, and the dogs all corral it into this tiny little funnel. But you need to
Hmm.
be at the funnel to make sure the right ones get through.
Yeah. Yeah. And then when you look at creativity, like, that we were talking about at the beginning of the conversation, uh, Yo-Yo Ma said, creativity is infinite, energy is not.
Mm.
And if we have all this creativity, and we can, that's the cool part about AI, is like, if you can envision it, if you can dream it up, and you can describe it using natural language, you can make it, and like that is unlocking opportunities that have never really been possible before. 2 years ago, they weren't possible, right? I can I can make a music video that teaches a concept, or I can code an interactive learning game just by saying, "Here's my standards and here's my goals. Make an interactive learning game," right? Like stuff like that. So I just think that when you look at creativity and you look at the human in the loop, you know. There needs to be the human guiding and steering and iterating, like you said earlier, Winston, and just coming up with the stuff that's actually going to be useful, not white noise.
That kind of makes me think of mindset a little bit. What kind of mindsets do you think people need to have now as they engage with AI? Because it's a different experience than what we're used to.
Yeah. So I've thought a lot about that, because these are new mindsets, they're new paradigms. You know, AI totally caught us off guard, right? In terms of how we see work. And I've narrowed it to four. So they've been coming up a lot
Mm.
actually already. But I have four mindsets. Mindset number one is we need to craft communication to get results that match our goals. So we think of it like there's a communication that needs to go on between us and whatever AI that we're using, so we can paint a clear picture of what we're aiming for and uh, get what we want, right? So it's all about communication. Is the first mindset is crafting communication. Mindset number two is interact collaboratively with AI as a capable and fallible colleague, or thought partner is the word I like better. Uh, but collaborate, we've talked about that word as well, but capable and fallible thought partner makes mistakes. We are the overseer. We are ultimately responsible for what we put in and then what we do with it. And I think a lot of people's, and tell me what, I'd be curious your take on this. A lot of prompt, AI interactions for a lot of people are kind of short. They might do it and they might be like, this wasn't very good, or I didn't like it, or I took it and I changed a bunch of stuff, and that's good too. You should change stuff, but what if we kept it as a collaboration and we just kept going and we were like, oh, we continued down the thread of what we were working on to continue to come up with better stuff. So
Yeah,
think
the
of it like a
the one
collaboration.
thing that comes to mind with the collaboration piece is when we're collaborating with humans, we ask them for their opinion. And I don't know if we
Mhm.
always do that with AI, because I think we should be asking AI, what do you need to know from me so that we can together come up with a better idea? What questions should I be asking you, and what do you need from me? That makes it really collaborative.
Yeah. And it's actually a prompt engineering strategy. Two parts to it. One, if you say, explain why or what you're thinking behind it to AI, but then one of my go-to prompts, this is if you know nothing about prompting, or even if you do, if you throw into the end of your prompt, interview me one question at a time to learn more so you can give me the best possible answer. That's it. Here's what I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Interview me one question at a time so you can learn more to give me the best possible answer. And that will change the way that you interact with and collaborate with AI, because it's going to actually ask you some pretty high, like I've been shocked and pleasantly surprised by some of the things that it's asked me. And as a result, because it has all that context, now the output's more aligned to what I want.
Yeah, I love that.
So then the third mindset is, and we've actually been, it's so funny how these have really been coming up the whole conversation because they're really embedded in the way that I think about AI, is narrow creatively with human expertise. This is where that third mindset, we're the funnel. Our job is to input, to get a lot, to guide and steer, and to come out with something that's useful. And so that's the really it's the end of the framework that I'll share with you shortly. And then the last mindset is ground critically and responsibly the inputs and outputs. And what that means is, we're critically evaluating two things: what we put in. So what we put in, are we putting in data that we shouldn't put in, like student last names or anything, that is a personal identifier that maybe we should just delete or extract or anonymize. Um, and then the other awareness that I don't know if this has come up on any of your podcasts, but just an awareness that when we input into AI, there is an environmental cost to that, right? Like it does use energy, it does use electricity, and if you're conscientious of that, at least, so that you're not wasting prompts, but you're really thinking through, like I'm voice prompting, crafting prompts, being clear, you're going to get better outputs than if you were just do like little tiny phrases at a time, and that actually taxes it more. Uh, so that's the input part. And then the output part is with what we make, are we, um, if credit is due, right? Are we giving credit? And that's a really great question right now. Like, when do we credit AI? Like, that's very, like, to what degree and how did it help? Um, and then with the outputs, are we checking it for accuracy? Did it hallucinate? Are we putting out something that's not true? If so, we need to be the filter on that. And then, is it bias? Right? Because AI is a pattern predictor, and it learned a lot of patterns on the internet and what it was trained on, and so that can come out in the responses. And so, are we filtering for that? Are we saying, does this represent what I want to represent? And if not, we're giving the AI feedback and we're changing it, or we're changing it ourselves, or making adjustments. So um, really all four of those mindsets, they're not like in an order, they all kind of overlap. But what I love about them is one of the key words in every single one is they all. Have you talked about the four C's on this show?
Mm-hmm.
The future ready
Yep.
skills
Creativity,
probably
collaboration.
have
Yep.
communication
Communication and
and
critical thinking. Yep.
critical thinking. They're all embedded in those four mindsets because I just think those are the way that we need to be teaching kids too. How do you interact with AI?
Okay. So I love the fact that you not only talk about giving AI credit, because that's at the end of academia or anything, even when you're talking to a person, giving someone responsive due for how they informed your engagement or learning is absolutely necessary. So I really appreciate gener- the genuineness of engaging, right? The authenticity and the
Hmm.
professionalism of that. And additionally, I love your thinking through those common mindset necessary for engaging with AI. And I'm
Hmm.
always throughout the entire time what I'm hearing is creating useful in frameworks to ask AI
Hmm.
questions, right? Especially thinking about the
Hmm.
environmental costs. I never really thought about that before. With that, that now gives
Hmm.
me an opportunity to ask you this question about, like, you created this idea called crafting framework, right? And I believe it is about asking
Hmm.
questions. Could you talk to that talk to about that, the what the crafting framework is, and how would someone use the
Yeah.
crafting framework in their engagement?
Yeah, so uh, I love to learn new things. And when I was getting into this, I was taking just tons of courses and reading a bunch of books and following a bunch of thought leaders. And what I was finding was like, oh, I was finding useful things a lot of different places that I didn't know where to put, right? Like I had seen prompting frameworks out there. There are plenty of ones that are just for prompting. And what I was like, what's missing here is the mindsets. And what's missing here is like not just how do you put input into AI to get something that you want. And so that's kind of where the crafting framework was like the idea of it came from because I was like, I feel like there's a need here to kind of put it all together in one place. And so and there's what I would describe it as is mindsets, which we've talked about and are embedded in it, and skill sets to responsibly leverage everyday AI. Like that's kind of what I would describe it as. And I was just trying to figure out how do I make this sticky, kind of thinking about my background in learning and like how do I package this in a way that I can share it with others so they can learn it too. And I will note that if you Google this, there is a pretty awesome one called Crafting AI Prompts, and it's a great framework. It has a really good a few prompting elements in there, but different enough in a way where this one is really geared to those mindsets and to those some different bigger picture ideas to how to approach AI.
Do you want to? I know it's a long framework, and we don't want to dive too deep into each. But can you give us a quick overview? What do each of the acronyms
Yeah.
stand for?
Yeah, so the craft part, we talked about crafting communication to get results that match your goals. This is just like kind of like crafting basics of like the C is context. So you say to AI, here's who you are and here's what you're good at. You kind of establish this persona. And I'll give you an example after this. But then request is, what do you want it to do? Here's your task. The A is audience. This will assist with the goal of. So who's it for and what's the goal? The F is format. So how do you want it to look? Show in, a rubric, show in learning objective, so just listing the style of the output. Now, um, something with that format, an even better way to provide format is to upload examples or exemplars to say, here's what good looks like. Study and learn from these and make me more like that. That's one of the best prompting tips out there is, here's a great assessment I have. Upload it and say study and learn this. Here's what I want to make a new one for these objectives or these standards, and that one is so powerful. And then the T is tone, and I used to describe tone as optional, but the more that I do it, like because think about an output for AI is going to be whatever is the most mainstream possible answer because it's a pattern predictor, right? So if you don't say in there something like, at least right now, I'm sure it'll get better. If you don't say be learner centered,
Mm.
it's probably going to be a little more traditional lecture style type of lesson, right? If you don't say be culturally inclusive, if you don't say be research based, if you don't say, those are a couple examples. But like when you name that, it's going to change the way that it outputs.
What's the ing?
Yeah. So that's craft. You craft the prompt, and then on the back of the ing, so that we've actually talked about these, so it'll be really fast. The I is interact collaboratively with AI as a
Mm,
capable, infallible colleague. N is narrow creatively with human expertise, and the G is ground critically and responsibly the inputs and outputs. So we kind of already unpacked those. There's a lot more to all of this, but that's just the big picture overview.
that's perfect. So as you were building this, I'm curious, what was two or three of the big aha moments or takeaways that you had kind of developing this process? Anything kind of rise to the top for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think, okay, so I don't know what you learned or heard about this, but like prompt engineering is kind of getting a bad. Have you heard like, oh, we don't need to prompt engineer anymore? And I actually don't like the word prompt engineering, but have you heard any of that?
I mean, at the beginning, it was like this was going to be everybody's future career quest is to become a prompt
Yeah,
engineer, and
right.
then in
Yeah.
the next breath, it seemed like people were saying, "No, you don't need to know anything at all. Just talk to it." So
Yeah.
that's what I've
Yep.
heard. I mean, it's kind of like it's the
Yep.
pendulum has swung completely.
Yeah. And I think that's such a bad term. Prompt engineering sounds so technical, but you talk to it like you talk to a person and you communicate what you want,
Hmm.
right? That's really essentially what prompt engineering is. The craft part here is, oh, these are just kind of good elements of good communication of saying like, here's who you are and here's what I want and here's what I want to look like. Like, I do think that certain systems are getting better, right? Or even like let's just say Magic School or School AI, right? They're they have the prompt engineering in the background where they've turned the prompts into buttons that you can just fill in what you want, right? But just realize you can do any of those things that you can do in those tools in any of the big tools, right? ChatGPT, Google Gemini, Claude, Copilot, Grok, all of them. So,
Here's something that I actually enjoy doing. It's just the hey, what you been thinking about? So, what have you been thinking
mm,
about lately regarding AI? Just anything. Where's your brain at? Where's your mind at? Just your thoughts as you are engaging with your own thinking. What are you thinking about lately?
yeah. Well, the name of my company is Amplified Impact. And what I mean by that is I want to help people use AI to amplify their ability to make an impact. And in what I do, so I do a lot of traveling and training schools and organizations on how do you use everyday AI, right? And a lot of times it'll be a short one. It'll be, maybe it'll be a 2 hour crash course, a half day crash course, a full day, deeper dive. And I really am like, okay, what is going to make the biggest impact? And I've just been thinking about like change management, because one and dones, the research shows one and dones don't work, right? You need leadership, you need, there's so much more to it. It needs to be job embedded, ongoing, relevant to the goals of your organization. And so I'm like, okay, so what are some ways that you can actually implement this stuff in a way that's practical and actually moves the needle? So I guess I was thinking about like what are three things that I think are helpful for that. One is increase sharing and deprivatize your practice. That was, and I got to credit my school that I was at. I mean, that was our big phrase. Like we're gonna open doors, we're gonna increase sharing, and we're gonna deprivatize practice. The more that you can share your experiences with AI, like within your PLC, within your staff. Maybe you structure time and space for it in a staff meeting, right? But like, hey, let's all around, in a small group share. How'd you use AI? And how did it go? Did it help you? Did it not? Like, what questions did you have? It's not perfect, right? What were the problems? But like, if we can have better structures to share more, I think that's going to really spur growth in our teams. Number two is celebrate the wins and be like, oh, like that felt good. Like whatever you tried, whatever you did, don't just keep moving and don't pretend like it wasn't awesome. Like, celebrate the win and recognize that. And you get a little dopamine hit from that. And I think that'll reinforce some of that behavior change. And then the last one is treat it like play. Like one of my favorite things to do with AI, it's becoming less and less common just because of where things are at, but I'll have a whole afternoon where I'll be like, oh, I get to go and try out a bunch of new tools today, or I get to go experiment. I have this task. And I wonder if AI could help me with that. And I go and I invite it to the table in that thing, and it feels like play. And sometimes it's amazing, and sometimes it's like, oh yeah, it's not there yet. But that discovery and like that mindset has been, I think, really, really big around like change management and yeah. So those are the three things: celebrate the wins, increase sharing, and treat it like play. I think that's going to help move the needle.
Mm. I love that. I really do love that. Again, like play is learning, right? When you're playing, you're actively engaging with more parts, and you'll remember that. So I think that's such
We don't play enough,
at all, at
we
all as
don't.
No.
adults, right? Like enjoying engaging with it. It's
Uh-uh.
like, yo, I'm gonna learn this inside out by breaking it and doing it all. You
Hmm.
know what I'm saying? So like, I really appreciate
Hmm.
the concept of that because sometimes it feels like you're gonna break AI and it's not gonna be a good thing if I ask this. You know what I'm saying? It's like, what am I doing?
Yep.
Um, I appreciate you. So now it's time for the this next segment in our engagement, and it's what's in the toolkit.
Check it out. Check it out. Check it out. Check it out. What's in the toolkit? What is in the toolkit? What's in the toolkit? Check it out.
So today we've talked a lot about AI. We've learned about the crafting framework. We've been given a lot of different tools to think through. Paul, as you think, what's a tool that you want to throw in the toolkit?
I think I'm going to kind of reinforce the idea of using AI as a collaboration partner. Think of it as another, I mean, it's not a human being, but interact with it like it's a human being. Have those kinds of back and forths. And like Tyler said, maybe you turn on that microphone mode and have it. If it's easier as a conversation, then have a conversation. But go back and forth and have that communication with it as if it is a fallible. Again, you got to check things, but a partner in your planning. I think that's a great place to start, and it's not super intimidating. So even if you haven't engaged a lot with AI, I think that's a good way to start.
I think it's a great way to start. Here's some like I take Paul's idea of how to do it and then try School AI. That's a really good tool to definitely try out. But I believe going back to our original quote of unlocking your creativity. Let's use the tool to unlock our ideas of thinking about how do we reach our students because we know our students better so we can allow AI to answer some questions on how we can make it better and more creative to engage with our students. So I've been really thinking about that unlocking part from the beginning because we've all rounded back into that at some point in this conversation. So I really want us to continue to think about how do we unlock learning for our students. Tyler, it's your
Yeah.
turn. What would you
Yeah.
like to throw into the toolkit?
Yeah. Oh, can I just build on your two and then share mine? Because I,
Please.
I just have something I got to say
Please.
for both.
Yeah, yeah.
So as teachers, I think there's a lot of misconceptions around how kids are using AI. And I think the more we learn how to use it for our own good, that will trickle out to our learners and we'll see differently how they can use it, right? Because yes, it can be used to shortcut learning, and yes, it can be used to deepen learning. And so the better we do at just getting in there and playing and doing those things, I think that's going to make a big difference. And then Paul, I gotta say, the anthropomorphism piece, as adults, we're good with that. We get the difference that AI is not human. And there is a risk as we talk about this with kids, just wanting to be, and I know you're not intending this, but I just think it's good to call out because I know there's gonna be people listening that have like, kind of been in this conversation of like, we have to be really careful that kids know AI is not a person. And just that clear line.
I think it's really good that you mentioned that too, Tyler, because there's a lot of stories in the news right now about kids befriending AI, getting dependent on AI becomes, I don't want to say a crutch, but it becomes a replacement for that human interaction. So I do think that that's an important thing to note.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. And here's my tip, my tool. If you don't have the app for whatever your major tool of choice is, if it's Google Gemini, if it's Claude, if it's ChatGPT, if it's Copilot, Grok, whatever. If you're only working in the browser, get it on your phone and you can work between the two easily. And there are some cool extra maybe buttons potentially that in some of the apps show up. And it just allows you to expand your flexibility when you get an idea to do that collaboration and thought partnership. So get the app of your tool of choice would be my tip.
Cool. All right, it's time for us to jump into our one thing.
It's time for that one thing.
One thing. All right, one thing time for a final thought today. What do you got, Winston?
I'm really rounding back into this idea of when do we provide AI with credit for how it's supported us? Because many of the listeners know I love hip hop. And sometimes giving credit for a person who says a word and then you add that into the sentence of the line, how much credit do you give that person, right? That's hard to define, but that line would be different if it wasn't for that word, right? So sometimes we do have to credit, even if it's a small minuscule. And going back to that earlier point of, if we don't allow our students to learn how to model engagement, right? How do we support them from not just going and using it to cheat? So if we don't demonstrate and show, hey, this is where and how I use this tool. This is how this tool created and provided and supported me through this piece. I don't think we'll be able to help students recognize how to give credit or validate their own thinking by demonstrating where AI was in that process. So I'm going back to this idea of how do we give credit while also allowing our students to claim credit.
Yeah. I'm thinking about a pretty short phrase that I think Tyler said a couple times: invite AI to the table. You know, it's part of the play experience, right? When you've got a problem that you're trying to solve, or you've got a task that you have to complete, invite AI to the table and see how that goes, interacting and collaborating with the AI assistant, because that is how you will learn what it's capable of, the strengths, the weaknesses, the things that you need to figure out a little bit more. You got to invite them over first.
People forget because it's a new mindset, right? I know some people that have a little Post-it note that says, they'll put it up here on their computer: how might AI assist with this? How might AI help? So
For sure.
well, I'm gonna channel my inner mentor, or my mentor, Tim Anderson. I quote him often on this saying, and he started every single staff meeting with this, and it didn't get old for me. He would every single day he'd say, it's okay to be where you are, it's not okay to stay there. There's always room to grow. And I would add, if you're not leveraging AI in your everyday work, you're missing an opportunity to be more effective and efficient as an educator, and maybe even have more work-life balance, right? Which I think is a big struggle. So it's okay to be where you are. It's not okay to stay there. There's always room to grow. Get in there and try it and play around and share it with others and celebrate the wins.
I love that. And before we log off here, Tyler, you want to share with our listeners where they can go to find your website? What's that web address?
Yeah, amplifiedimpact.solutions. And I love working with educators. I have worked with lots of other fields as well, but things like, whether I've done a lot of district kickoff keynotes of, what is AI? How do we use it? What are the mistakes to avoid? And what's this framework and how can we use it? And there's been a very that's gone really well, and I think that's really helped schools with that adoption of getting some common language and an experience dedicated to that. And then I do all kinds of different things like whether it's coaching or extended modules, and I would love to be a part of that. If you have any interest, please reach out.
Well, and thank you for being a part of this episode with us. We really appreciate you being here, Tyler.
Yeah, thanks. I'm honored, absolutely honored that you invited me to be a part of this. This was a fun conversation.
Definitely.
All right, take care.
All right, thank you.
Thanks for listening to Unpacking Education.
We invite you to visit us at avidopenaccess.org. where you can discover resources to support student agency and academic tenacity to create a classroom for future-ready learners.
We'll be back here next Wednesday for a fresh episode of Unpacking Education.
And remember, go forth and be awesome.
Thank you for all you do.
You make a difference.